According to industry experts, the percentage of people who actually see a video game's ending is 10 to 20%, a staggeringly tiny number once you start to consider the sheer amount of video game stories worth experiencing and the amount of hours we collectively sink in. With so much on the line, and unless you have the story mapped out in its entirety from day one, the ending being the last thing that gets put together, it's so easy for it all to go wrong. Closing levels, cutscenes, or entire back thirds can get retconned or otherwise ignored over time, the very idea of an ending meaning less and less in a medium full of DLC, patches, and second chances. A fifth of your player base should still very much matter, but sometimes, despite the purpose of an ending being to give closure, they can leave us with anything but. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 9 video game endings developers want you to forget. Number 9, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. The rebooted Tomb Raiders waxed and waned in popularity and overall direction, but all 3 are totally recommendable action games. Something that speaks to how tumultuous development became, though, is that third title Shadow of the Tomb Raider accidentally shipped with an ending that was supposed to be deleted. Hilariously, it was discovered when forum poster Tombstone was accused of lying about Lara receiving a letter from Jacqueline Natla at the end of the game. Natla is the main antagonist and Lara's rival from the original Tomb Raider, and her showing up as this advertised trilogy was wrapping up only confirmed there would be more games in this series going forward. In reality, this was never meant to be seen by the public. Square Enix quickly patched the game, noting that multiple post-credits scenes were explored during development, and unfortunately one of the directions that was considered but not chosen was mistakenly included in the game. Number 8, Superhot Mind Control Delete. Superhot is still one of the most unique and recommendable first-person shooters of the last 10 years, if not all time. However, when the devs returned for an impromptu sequel, the original ending with your character being assimilated into the Superhot program entirely, killing themselves to game forever, they really wanted to make a point about gamers' devotion to a specific title. As such, Mind Control Delete could be ran over and over, building up a sentiment over time that you've played enough and seen everything there is to offer. It ends with the ludicrous ask that you wait 8 real-time hours for the system to reboot so you can play again. You can see what the developers were going for, but ultimately it just annoyed people who'd paid for a product and were now locked out of it for the better part of a day. After a whole ton of backlash, Superhot team relented. They wouldn't remove the lockout entirely, but reduced it to a still kinda ridiculous 2.5 hours instead. Number 7, Fallout 3. Something that always felt like a hell of an obvious mistake on Bethesda's part, the franchise-changing Fallout 3 ended on a bum note for the ages. Seeing you doing everything in your power to activate a water purifier and save the local populace, your final task is to then enter a room filled with radiation. Only this will kill you. A noble sacrifice for the greater good is clearly what Bethesda had in mind, only you're literally friends with a super mutant, a creature who can survive radiation no problem. Asking folks to go in for you results in some insultingly lame dialogue about how it's your destiny to die, leading to a mass fan revolt and Bethesda to eventually release an ending where you didn't have to kill yourself. Oh, and they decided to charge money for it. Because of course they did. Number 6, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Assassin's Creed lore got so ridiculously complex in a noodle pile of plot threads kind of way, it finally lapped itself in Valhalla, reintroducing and tying off Desmond's place in the canon, finishing Layla's storyline, and finally taking a second to exhale. In amongst that sprint to the finish, though, was the follow-up to the legendary Minerva twist from Assassin's Creed 2, Desmond stabbing fellow assassin Lucy in the finale of AC Brotherhood. Fans rightfully pointed out, though, that Desmond should not have been able to do this, being he's descended from eons of assassins, and the very idea of the creed was to go against the Ancient One's mind control on the human race during the time of Adam and Eve. These Isu should have literally never been able to make Desmond do anything, as it kinda breaks the whole idea of what the assassins represent in this fiction. Going forward, and clearly a result of Ubisoft's writing teams being rotated around for each subsequent game, it was never addressed. Instead, Desmond was elevated to a literal Jesus-like messiah figure in Assassin's Creed 3's ending, declaring freedom for all beings after saving the world while sacrificing himself to end his character arc, at least for then. Number 5, Life is Strange. An awesome series of highly recommendable branching stories, largely eclipsing even Telltale at this point, the Life is Strange titles are some of the most meticulously written character dramas in entertainment history. It's precisely because of the love, care, and attention from developers Don't Nod and Deck 9 that fans are ravenous when it comes to monitoring every last detail about the characters themselves. All of which is to say that comparing notes on the original Life is Strange and prequel Before the Storm will only bring you pain. Everything from specific years some events took place to when Chloe first dyed her hair get get chopped and changed around. In terms of endings though, a memorable scene from the original game's first episode has Max telling Chloe about her powers, only for some snowfall to happen in 80-degree heat. Understandably, both characters are shocked by this and essentially experience snow for the first time together, with Chloe in particular questioning how it could be happening. Thing is, Chloe experienced this exact same thing in Before the Storm, largely meaning her reaction here no longer makes any sense. Number 4. Halo 2. One of the most gutting cliffhangers in gaming history, over time it emerged that Bungie too shared the frustration around Halo 2's finale. Not at first though. Back at launch they were out there saying Master Chief's line about finishing this fight and cutting to credits was entirely intentional, a lead into the next game that was planned this whole time. That started to change though when a mix of Bungie's Marty O'Donnell and a slew of interview questions started unraveling the truth at the close of the 2010s. 2016 had O'Donnell note to IGN that he still had all the recordings necessary to release the ending as it was. For Halo 2 though, we would have seen the opening of the Ark, but its location was actually on Earth, queuing up Master Chief and the Arbiter chasing the Prophet of Truth for one huge climactic duel. Brilliantly, the close of 2020 even had Bungie's then storyboard artist Lee Wilson release all his sketches for this ending online, cementing the fact it's never going to be rendered out properly, but providing closure for a story that began 16 years prior. Number 3. No Man's Sky. Yes, the obvious comment here will be that No Man's Sky's original 2016 state should be forgotten in its entirety, but there was always an enjoyable sci-fi survival game here that scores of players fell in love with anyway. What even they couldn't get past or had a problem with though was No Man's Sky's ending, i.e. the fact that when you finally go to interact with the center of the galaxy, you instead just zoom out, back past everywhere you've been until the game starts over with a new galaxy to explore. It was all handled incredibly unceremoniously, almost feeling like the game was struggling to load what was actually supposed to be there, kicking you back to the start because the whole thing was unfinished. Over time and immediately with the 2018 Next update, No Man's Sky reframed this reset as the culmination of many interactions with other explorers and characters that you can meet. The entire message of No Man's Sky is finding satisfaction in exploration itself, and things like the Origins update now let you choose which type of galaxy you'd like to boot into next time around. That original hard reset approach is thankfully long gone. Number 2. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Game Gear. Of the many Sonic games across almost every console there's ever been, on the Game Gear the blue blur took a bit of a detour that still freaks people out to this day. Clearly not intentionally harrowing because it's still Sonic the Hedgehog, play Sonic 2 without getting any of the Chaos Emeralds required to save Tails from Dr. Robotnik, and a truly creepy credit sequence plays out. Seeing Sonic running along part of Mobius now by himself, only after all the names have been acknowledged does he slowly stop and look to the sky. There, convincing millions of Sonic fans that Tails was killed by Robotnik due to Sonic failing to deliver the ransom is a ghostly remembrance visage of Tails in the sky. Obviously, Tails didn't really die in canon, but the amount of fan debate, alternate timeline theories, and now 20 years worth of conversations might say otherwise. And number 1, Mass Effect 3's original ending. Even with the Legendary Edition stripping away multiplayer microtransactions and adding all story DLC as standard to Mass Effect 3, there's always been an overarching issue with how the galaxy-wiping Reapers were conceptualized across the whole trilogy. The reason comes from BioWare largely aiming for an explanation to the Reapers' purpose relating to them being immortal. It's mentioned in Mass Effect 1 by Sovereign himself, and Mass Effect 2 brings in mention of a cataclysmic force known as Dark Energy. Writer Drew Karpyshyn told PC Gamer in 2013 that the Reapers would be wiping out organic life because they can't control biotic power, and that was the key to stopping Dark Energy slowly obliterating the galaxy entirely. The Reapers would stay immortal as mentioned, but BioWare would write some way for Commander Shepard and the gang to win the day. In the EA-meddled Mass Effect 3 we got though, the Reapers were retconned to be created by the Leviathans, opening up the choose one of 3 endings finale where Shepard can gain control and stop the apocalypse that way. The Legendary Edition did fix many things about Mass Effect as a franchise, but there's no getting around that lack of connective tissue. And those are just 9 video game endings developers want you to forget. Let me know your favorites down in the comments below, and please subscribe to the What Culture Gaming podcast. From now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.